Morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Derek Bros of the Conscious Resistance Network, and you are listening to the Conscious Resistance Live. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today is Saturday, August 22nd, 2015. It's been a little while since I've done this podcast. Most of you who are regular listeners or viewers on the YouTube channel, you know that I do this as often as I can, which is somewhat infrequently because I often go out on the road to cover various stories in my journalism career and path. I spent August on the road, take a trip for the last week of July through the first week of August to Arizona to go cover the San Carlos Apache and their resistance to the Australian mining company Rio Tinto, their mine that they're planning to build on the Oak Flat campground. This deal was set up, of course, by Senator John McCain, and they're resisting that, and I was able to go document and show that. Powerful stuff that can be found on Mint Press News. And I also spoke at and vended at the Jackalope Freedom Festival and the Northern Forests of Arizona, or the Sitgreaves National Forest to be exact. And yeah, so I've been busy, but I'm back now working on lots of new stories and ideas, and my goal is to do these podcasts on a weekly to bi-weekly basis because I cover a lot of information. I'm constantly researching, both on the philosophical side of things. I've really been diving deep into my research on the 60s and 70s, the alliance between the New Left, the anti-war movement, the hippies and such, and the old right, which was some of the more conservative, some of the people that would be like Murray Rothbard and others that led to, a libertarian movement as we know it in America today, and people like Ron Paul and others, and sort of this synthesis between these two groups. That's one area I've been focusing on. Also, in the second half of the show, after we get through the news, we're going to talk a little bit about the ideas of animal consciousness and animal rights for a few moments, and lots of different things. And I go through all this information, whether it's politics and current events or the philosophy side of things, and also staying involved in my community and just connecting with lots of good people, and like I said, doing cool shit. And I want to bring that to you guys. So I hope that in between these shows, my rambling and such, that you're able to follow my work at mintpressnews.com, at theantimedia.org, at truthinmedia.com, at coinivore.com, and of course at our website, theconsciousresistance.com. And before we go over the top news stories that I wrote about this past week, we're going to go over, I like to show you what's the latest on the Conscious Resistance Network, our website. We've got some new content from our contributors, and of course I'm always looking for new contributors. I actually just talked to someone earlier who's about to become our roving in the field reporter, who will start contributing regular content to the website and to the network in the coming weeks from the road. And so if you make music, if you make art, if you are an organic cook, or if you know some health stuff or yoga, or you just got something to say about consciousness or anarchy or freedom, or you just want to get your thoughts out, come sign up on the website, send me a message on Facebook, or email me at derek@theconsciousresistance.com, and we'll get you set up and help you grow your message and get your ideas out there and see what we can learn from each other. Most recently on the website, we have a new video from our contributor Jeff for Justice, Inspiring Homeless Helper Example. I didn't name that, and it sounded a little funny, but apparently it's a really good video. I haven't seen it yet, showing Jeff getting out there in the street and just connecting with people in his community and doing good stuff. One of our older contributors, Rahul, came back and he wrote something. He always writes good stuff. Check out all of his work. But this one's called Your Ideology is Trivial. That sounds interesting. And we have an interview by Danilo, aka Peaceful Anarchism. He interviewed Skylar J. Collins, unschooling father, author, and founder of EverythingVoluntary.com. Danilo also wrote a piece called Why I'm an Anarchist a few weeks back. And he did another interview with Bill Rupert called The Torture State and the American Inquisition. And earlier in the month we had the music spotlight from hip-hop artist Master Mark Jenkins, who's here from Austin, Texas. I'm in Houston, but he's out here representing Texas, and he did a song with another Houston rapper, K Reno, called Break These Chains. So it's pretty cool stuff. And if you go to the music spotlight, if you're ever looking for new music that's not just cussing and negativity and consumerism, go to our music spotlight. You'll find all types of different music, and it's all got a positive vibe, good message to it. And Danilo did another interview with Demelza Hayes, anarcho-capitalist, Mises Institute Summer Fellow, and Bitcoin specialist, and then wrote an article or an essay called "There Is No Society, There Are Only Individuals." So we got some good content, and of course there's more videos on the YouTube channel, and I've got several videos coming up. I actually just did another podcast. If you're listening on Patreon, it'll be available if you sign up for the monthly sponsorship. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, and you get access to all these other podcasts and content that I try to do, and I promise I will be doing more now that I'm back home and not on the road. But we did a podcast there on the book, The Four Agreements, breaking that down. If you've never heard about that, The Four Agreements, Google that real quick. Search that. DuckDuckGo, do that. DuckDuckGo is an alternative search engine to Google. It doesn't sound as simple. It's not as easy to say. DuckDuckGo it. People look at you like you're crazy, but they don't spy on you and they don't gather all your information. They don't work with the NSA. So check out DuckDuckGo. But yeah, so go search on DuckDuckGo, The Four Agreements, and you'll find out more about this book. But I go over the first chapter, which is called Domestication and the Dream of the Planet. And I'm not going to go more into that. I ask that you either sign up for Patreon to listen to that, or wait a couple days and the video will be available on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/consciousresistance. And that's another thing. Subscribe there, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at TheConsciousRN. And you can follow me personally on Twitter at DBrosLiveFree. D for Derek, Bros, BROZE, Live Free. And yeah, all that good stuff. Now let's get into the news you want to know and need to know. I'm writing all week. I have a news feed reader that basically what I do is I set up a bunch of keywords and phrases, and I search for those throughout the week. I look for stories that the mainstream is ignoring, that the independent quote-unquote alternative media is ignoring or missing. I do feel that I have a knack for finding certain angles that other people might not necessarily look into, and I'm a research hound. I'm a nerd for the details, and I love reading documents. So I feel like this gives me a leg up on some of the competition. Although there's no real competition, I support and appreciate all the other independent journalists out there doing their own thing. But I really try to keep my ears and my eyes to a number of topics and focus on solutions. I'm going to start broadening my scope even more to focus on solutions. But this is a bit of what I was focused on this past week, and then we're going to pick a couple of these that are more important, and really maybe even look back over the last couple of weeks, because it's been a few weeks since I've done this show. So if you're listening, you can go to derekbroze.contently.com. Derek, DERRICK, Bros, BROZE.contently.com. That is where you can find all of my articles in one place. If you're watching the video, you're looking at the screen right now and you are seeing what I'm seeing. But if not and you're listening, go to the website, scroll through there. You can find all of my articles ever for all the outlets I write for. And there's a lot of stuff here. There's way too much to go over in this one short show. But I'm looking back here and I see, I think I've talked to you guys. I went to Jade Helm in Bastrop, Texas in July. The cops are still killing activists, people, native activists, black activists, human beings in general. As I mentioned, I did this report, Arizona Apache mobilized against bill which hands sacred native lands to mining company. Really long title. I've written recently about how it's been flaring up in Ferguson again, and people are trying to stoke racial tensions between the Oath Keepers and the activists there. I know plenty of people who assume that all Oath Keepers are racist because they're mainly, which is true, they're mainly white guys. But that doesn't mean that they're all racist, of course, and that some of them are ex-military cops, so we shouldn't work for them. I think that, in fact, if we could just get these groups of people, all these people who are radicals, to work together and maybe start open carrying and defending our communities more directly, we might get these people off our backs and see some real change. But we'll have to promote more unity, and that's something I'm going to do another podcast on. My ideas, as I said, I've been researching the 60s and 70s, the alliances between radical groups then. I won't get too off track right now. I know we're about to cover the news, but you'll hear more about this. Just remember this name, because it's going to mean a lot more by the end of October or so. The Radical Libertarian Alliance. Remember that, research that, DuckDuckGo it, and see what you find. A few weeks back, this article here, Congressman Bill Posey calls for investigation of CDC whistleblowers' claims. Now, this is a story that I highly recommend. I'm not going to go too much into it right now because I don't really want to focus on it this episode, but I hope that you will look into it yourself. It's written for Ben Swann's truthandmedia.com. Just go there and you can find the article about Congressman Bill Posey. And this is a story I have reported on in the past and been following for at least a year. The story of the CDC whistleblower, who Dr. William Thompson, a scientist at the CDC, who says that him and his coworkers, quote, fudged numbers to change numbers related to black children and autism and vaccines. I'll let you read the article so you can get all of the dirty details, but suffice it to say, after a year of speculation and people not being sure if this CDC whistleblower even existed, and we found out he was a real person, he released a statement through the lawyers last year. We hadn't heard anything. Supposedly documents had been turned into Congressman's office, and then finally, lo and behold, earlier this month, Bill Posey, the congressman, goes onto the floor of the House and gives a general speech and enters into the congressional record the documents turned over to him by Dr. William Thompson. So, the media can ignore it all they want, but without a doubt, this doctor who says that he was involved in fudging of numbers on a CDC vaccine study related to autism has turned in documents to a member of Congress, and those have now been entered into the congressional record. And he said that if other members of Congress want to know more, he will give them copies of that, and if they call for a new investigation, everything will come out. But if not, then nothing's going to come of it. And if you believe that the people in positions of power, representatives in Congress, etc., care what you say, then email them, phone call them, let them know about this, spread this article around. If you think they'll listen to protests, then march on their offices until they come and listen to you and tell them that this is Americans and children's and people's health, and we need to know about this. If you think that's going to work, and if you don't think any of those things are solutions, then I would say just continue to educate yourself, continue to be skeptical of government science and government claims. Be skeptical of everyone in general, but be skeptical of when they tell you something is good for you. Do your own research. That's all I got to say on that. Now, I wrote 10 articles this past week. One of them is not posted to the antimedia.org. Another one I still have to write, which will bring it to a total of 11 articles this week. The last one that I'm going to write today is for coinivore.com, a website dedicated to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news that I write for. And it's going to be about the Bitcoin XT fork. If you don't know anything about that, DuckDuckGo that. Bitcoin XT fork. Big things happen in the Bitcoin world. Sort of a battle between the old guard and those who are trying to keep Bitcoin quote unquote pure, and those who are trying to stay afloat with the rapidly growing system. And there are some different speculation from all sides about what the true motives are of this change, but I'm going to get into that in that article. So subscribe to, follow, and like coinivore.com. Find them on Facebook and all that stuff, and you'll find that article. And probably by the time you're hearing this or seeing this, the article will definitely be out. So 2 things that I want to cover. These are going to be, I guess we could put this under native and indigenous news resistance in America, because as I say in one of these articles, that what we're seeing is not just a revival of American Indian, Native American resistance, but this is the modern version of the American Indian movement. If you don't know the history of them, I've done some videos in the past on how they occupied Alcatraz Island. They had the last gunfight with the federal government in the 70s at Little Bighorn, and done all these amazing things, and were really radical activists in that time period, and things sort of settled down. But there's the youth again is kind of rising up and coming in, and they're really just mixed of tribes all around the country, standing up for Native causes and Native people that need defense, and even in Native communities where they might not necessarily realize that they're under attack. And this is what I say in that, is that this is just the continuation of that, because it's also the continuation of colonization that is happening to Native people. One of the articles covers Senator John McCain, as I said, who's already kind of come under fire for his involvement in the Oak Flat deal. And he was speaking in Arizona on Navajo land for a presentation to the Navajo code talkers from World War II. And he was also meeting with some Navajo officials, local officials as well, apparently to talk about water rights. So this has some people scared that, McCain's coming to sneak another deal in. And often, what I will say from my experience on in certain communities and on certain reservations, is that you find that the native communities themselves are often divided between the people who are trying to maintain the ways and keep the traditional ways alive, and those who are sort of already westernized, Americanized, and willing to make compromises, maybe unsavory compromises with unsavory people such as John McCain, in order to save what they can. And then there's others who are really trying to preserve the ways and preserve the land and not sell out to this system of colonization that has slaughtered and abandoned and just attacked their people for 500 years plus. So there's a lot of there's a lot of different viewpoints in here. But as I said, the youth are really rising up. I got to meet these guys in Oak Flat, and some of the same people were here at the Navajo meeting in where is it? Window Rock, I think it is. And you have two incidences of John McCain getting trolled. One is a young dude, like 17 years old, senior in high school. Young Navajo man comes up to John McCain and pulls the old switcheroo, goes up to shake his hand, right? And then right as he's shaking his hand, he pulls out this little card that says protect Oak Flat. And John McCain, flipped out and throws the card back at him and says, you need to leave. And then the kid respectfully just walks off and leaves. But of course, John McCain tries to act like it doesn't bother him. Then later he was interviewed about Oak Flat, and he said, historians have attested to the facts that Oak Flat is not anything to do with sacred grounds. Several historians have attested to that. I respect people's right to disagree. So basically saying these young kids are misguided. This is how they always try to paint you. The people in power, the establishment, whatever you want to call them, the ruling class, from the local level and city council. I've dealt with this hundreds of times. They try to demean you and act as if you're just, you're chicken little, your ideas, your concerns are unnecessary, they're unwarranted, they're coming from a simple-minded person who doesn't really understand how complicated things are. And that's just a way to demean you and your cause and to make you less than human. And this is definitely what the goal is with native peoples, to make them to appear to be less than human so that the colonization and the destruction and oppression can continue. As McCain attempted a backdoor exit, the activists chanted in the hallway with their arms linked. Once they noticed McCain's convoy making an escape, the group began chasing on foot. They were temporarily blocked by law enforcement, but eventually made their way out of the building, chasing the cars as they exited the Navajo Nation. So you can see in this video, please do watch the video. It's awesome seeing these brothers and sisters. They come in the building, they sit down, they do kind of like a sit-in. They're chanting and playing drums and singing their songs, and then they chase after him all the way off the reservation, chase his whole little caravan. So then once the reports started going around, including this article, which has been seen by 53,000 plus people, the videos have been seen by another 50,000 plus people. So, John McCain obviously is campaigning. They're realizing they're taking heat. They can keep this off the quote-unquote mainstream, actually known as the old stream media. Remember that. Program yourself. Old stream media. They are the old stream. We are the new stream. And he responded saying, his office said, Senator McCain was honored. Can we just listen to this, first of all? Let me preface this with, get ready for a bunch of bullshit political statement with one actual sentence referencing the incident. The rest of it just fluff bullshit. And here we go. Senator McCain was honored to be invited by the Navajo Nation to meet with tribal and community leaders and to speak at the celebration of the Navajo Code Talkers on Friday. It was a great visit, and he received a very warm reception from the Navajo community in Window Rock. He certainly wasn't chased off the reservation. This small group of young protesters had no practical impact on his productive meetings with top tribal leaders on a range of key issues, including the EPA's recent Gold King mine spill, which threatens to contaminate the Navajo Nation's water supply. So he comes in acting like he gives a shit, and yada yada yada. So he got trolled twice that day. Woohoo! Awesome, kick ass. Thank you guys for being there and doing that. Anthony Sewell, Cooper Indigenize, all you guys are awesome. And this one is not good news. This article entitled "Colonization Continues. U.S. court denies Native prisoners the right to long hair." Now, first off, some would say, hey, you're a prisoner. If you're in prison, you must have done something wrong. I don't give a shit whether you were able to have long hair or not. Okay, I guess you could say that. Maybe we don't care if a murderer, gets his religious rights. But I'd say once you start denying people rights because of their misgivings and their mistakes, we start down a slippery slope of becoming that which we are trying to fight. And we have to be careful with that. Also, all the other people, all the other religions get to have their particular, prayers and food, etc., that are required for their beliefs. So this is just, again, discrimination against natives. And historically, hair and the length of hair has always been important to a number of tribes around across the landmass known as United States of America. So, continuation of the colonization, as I said. On August 5th, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals upheld Alabama's prison policy, which requires male inmates to keep their hair short. Despite the fact that prisons around the country allow long hair with no issues, the federal judge said the Alabama Department of Corrections has valid security and hygiene concerns. Yeah, they're so worried about these guys' hygiene. They're afraid if they let them grow their hair long that they're all going to start getting sick, or it's just going to get nasty. The Associated Press reports inmates had told the court that their long hair has deep religious significance, and they wanted to keep their hair unshorn because of their beliefs. Their sacred and ancestral core religious traditions are at stake, said the inmate's attorney, Mark Sabell of Montgomery. The department had argued that long hair was a hygiene risk and could be used to conceal weapons and contraband. Now, first, let me tell you this. I've done a little bit of time behind the bars and in those institutions, and they're damn right. People can hide crack pipes and stuff. I've seen people hide crack pipes inside their afros, and girls hide things up in their hair. So that is possible, but that's I think that's a weak excuse, because obviously, as they said before, that across the country people have found a way to deal with this. So find a way, Alabama. Quit being silly. This is the third time the 11th Circuit Court has heard the case. Mark Sabell said he is considering a second appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court Mark Sabell said he is considering a second appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court or asking for a hearing in front of all of the 11th Circuit Court judges. The Supreme Court previously sent the case back to the lower courts for review. So this case is getting tossed around and ignored, and, it's just another way that they can just fuck with them. Now, in the article, I briefly go into the history of boarding schools and how this has been something that they've always wanted to do, is cut the natives' hair. It's not just because they're afraid they're going to hide contraband, because, again, it's about dehumanizing them as a people. As far back as the 1700s, I think you can find records of those orders going out. We have one for sure from 1902 discussing the need to cut their hair. And one of the first things they would do to native youth when they would take them into boarding schools is to cut their hair, change their names, prevent them from speaking their language, and all kinds of crazy shit. And it's about dehumanizing you, making you not human in the eyes of the people. And guess what? This is still happening today, not only to native communities, but to all the people that we're afraid of, people of different skin color and different language and different nation. Have you heard of Guantanamo Bay? What do you think is happening there? Treating people less than human. And why is it allowed to continue? Because the rest of the country doesn't think that they're people that actually deserve rights. So it doesn't really matter to me how they're treated. I don't really care if my tax dollars are going towards that. That's not my business. It's not my concern. Do you remember 9/11? Yeah, blah, 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 things like that. Yeah. Speaking of 9/11, all right, I got all my articles set up that we're going to go over. I got 3 or 4 more, and then we'll be done for today. And again, these are all at derekbros.contently.com, and all the stuff we went over before can be found at theconsciousresistance.com. And I want to remind you, you are listening to The Conscious Resistance Live. My name is Derek Bros. Thank you guys for supporting us. If you ever want to support further, you can go to the website and look under the Invest tab, and there's all kinds of information there. Download the book, share the articles. We really appreciate your support. Just want to remind you guys that it's monumental, because what I'm doing and this idea to bring together people under a network or a label of activists is to spread awareness, because the more ideas spread, the more the messages out there, the stronger each of us are as individuals, and the more likely it is that we're going to create this free world that I think that we're all working towards. So I need you, you need me. Let's work together. Let's spread information. Let's share it. Let's make it go viral, and let's focus on the solutions, because that's where it's really at. So this next story that we're going to be covering, these next couple, they go into the surveillance area, which is one of my fortes, keeping up with surveillance news, the way Big Brother's watching you. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe I read 1984 when I was too young, and now I'm just obsessed with the idea and the knowledge that somebody is watching and listening to me at all times. What do you want? Get out of my head. Stop paying attention to me. I just want to be free. But there are solutions. First step, spread awareness. Second step, build counter technology to combat the surveillance. Third step, create your own surveillance networks, survey those who are trying to control your lives, and then eliminate it. But I think that really the problem here is that we've passed the point of no return. We have technology of amazing sorts that really allows us to be up in each other's lives, and it's ridiculous. And how do you go backwards? Once you've established this level of this panopticon, like, do you really think that any law that gets passed, that all of a sudden the government's just going to get rid of this billions and billions of dollars worth of technology and time and research and energy, and just, oops, we'll just put it back, we'll go backwards, we won't use it? Yeah, right. I mean, once it's out of Pandora's box, as the phrase goes, there's no going back. I mean, how can we stop? I don't really see a real solution to stopping the proliferation of surveillance. Some people would say we need to have a complete surveillance society so that everything is seen as everything is on record, and there can be accountability, and there will no longer be lying, and there will not be deception and things like that. I think that's kind of freaky. What are your thoughts? The Supreme Court may review the U.S. government's cell phone kill switch. A lot of you might not know this, but the government has a cell phone shutdown policy known as the kill switch. The Electronic Privacy Information Center last week filed a petition with the U.S. Supreme Court trying to get them to force the U.S. government to reveal information about the kill switch. They've been fighting for this information since July 2011, when, as some of you may remember, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, or the BART officials in San Francisco, they shut down cellular networks during a protest of a murdered homeless man. This guy got murdered. Everybody came out there, started rallying around at the BART station. They were shutting it down, and all of a sudden cell networks started getting all screwy. Everybody's phones started going down. Activists' live streams got screwed up. It was a big thing, and the BART officials still deny that they had anything to do with it. They said they never blocked the cell networks. But shortly after that, EPIC, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, submitted a Freedom of Information Act request to the Department of Homeland Security, and they were trying to find out what the procedures are regarding these actions. First, the DHS lied and said, we are unable to locate or identify any responsive records. However, in November 2013, a district court ruled that the DHS had improperly withheld information, specifically information regarding something known as Standard Operating Procedure 303 or SOP 303. This is the important part. Pay attention. The DHS appealed this decision and was once again allowed to withhold records. Now EPIC is taking the fight to the Supreme Court. In their petition to the Supreme Court, EPIC argues that, quote, absent a Supreme Court review, the decision of the Court of Appeals could transform the FOIA from a disclosure to a withholding statute. So they're basically saying if somebody doesn't intervene, allowing them to deny records based on these faulty criteria is going to completely change FOIA law, and it's going to allow the government to continue withholding things, as they already do. In case you haven't known, if you don't know, the government constantly denies FOIA requests on shady reasoning, lack of reasoning, and gets away with it. Little is known about these programs, but EPIC writes that a 2011 report from the White House asserted that the National Security Council and the Office of Science and Technology Policy have the legal authority to control private communication systems in the United States during times of war or other national emergencies. Also, on July 6, 2012, the White House approved an executive order seeking to ensure the continuity of government communications during a national crisis. As part of the executive order, DHS was granted the authority to seize private facilities when necessary, effectively shutting down or limiting civilian communications. So we have an executive order that's going to give the DHS, the agency involved with FEMA, power to shut down civilian or limit civilian communications in times of emergency, whatever the hell that means, national crisis, whatever that means. And we also have a report from 2011 from the White House. So we have two admissions here that this program exists, yet they are trying to tell EPIC that there is no records of such things. EPIC has asked the court for 3 specific pieces of information regarding the kill switch program. They want to see the full text of SOP 303, the full text of the predetermined series of questions that determines if a shutdown is necessary, and any executing protocols related to the implementation of SOP 303 distributed to the DHS and other federal agencies. So we need to really get to the bottom of this if we're going to understand how this kill switch works and what it can do. And again, how do we stop this? I don't know. And we need to have backup plans, mesh networks that aren't based on mesh networks for internet and for cellular communication. And there are some off-the-grid cell phones out there and text messaging devices. If you do your research well enough, you'll find them. But we need to create our own network so that when they try to shut down the networks that everyone else is using, or go to AT&T, their best friend, or Verizon, or whoever, they're not able to just do that. They can't just coerce them into shutting down, and we have our own backup networks that we are then able to continue using, and we are not limited. Next story that I have here, the Justice Department is facing a lawsuit. Lots of lawsuits here because the government doesn't want to tell people what it's working on. Justice Department faces lawsuit over DNA collection program. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is suing the U.S. Department of Justice and the FBI for failing to provide documents related to the rapid DNA system. The FBI said they found no responsive records to Freedom of Information Act requests by the EFF. That seems like to be a common refrain here. Oh, we didn't find anything. And that's the same shit I'm hearing on the city level. I mean, I guarantee if I had the money to sue them and push it further, there would probably be some documents revealed, but I don't have those resources just yet. Rapid DNA analyzers are machines designed to allow processing of a DNA sample in as little as 50 minutes. The machines are portable and roughly about the same size as a laser printer. This means that law enforcement using rapid DNA can collect the DNA sample from a suspect and match the profile against a database without the help of a scientist in an accredited lab. The EFF believes this will lead to further invasions of privacy. According to the FBI's own fact sheet, the first Rapid DNA Program Office was established in 2010 to direct the development and integration of rapid DNA technology for use by law enforcement. The EFF is concerned that rapid DNA is simply another aspect of the growing use of biometrics. Biometrics is of course defined as the measuring and analysis of such physical attributes as facial features and voice or retinal scans. Obviously, there are some privacy risks associated with the collection of DNA. If you've got this sucker-ass cop on the side of the road just pulling over people and just saying, oh, I suspect you of drug use, or I suspect you of this, so I need to temporarily detain you, and in that process, we're also going to collect your DNA for our records, it's going to be some dangerous stuff. And this is a future. You see some like Brave New World 1984 type shit where you can't get into places unless you've got your DNA scan or whatever. It's a slippery slope. It gets dangerous. Jennifer Lynch, the EFF senior staff attorney, said, incredibly, the FBI told us it found no records responsive to our request, even though it has been funding and working with manufacturers to develop the technology and has a whole webpage devoted to the subject. The FBI said it couldn't locate a single document about this major effort to use rapid DNA. In March, it was reported that the Tucson PD in Arizona would begin using rapid DNA, and the San Diego PD in California, they recently put out their own article responding to the New York Times for a report on the department using their system. And now we've got cops in the UK. They just did their first upload of results from this rapid DNA system to their national DNA database. So obviously this thing's being used, but the government says it's not officially happening yet, that they still have to change certain rules and regulations before it will be put into use, and they claim to have no information about it. But it's being put into place already. This is similar to the Stingrays and the fight against the Stingrays. They're lying to you people. Don't you recognize? They're lying. The cops are lying. They're not going to tell you the truth. They're lying. Speaking of Stingrays, and I'm going through these kind of rapid fire because, I don't want it to get too repetitive here, but let me just give it to you this way. They're spying on you through your phones. They're spying on you through your DNA. They're spying on you through these machines that can see into your house. They have drone surveillance. They've got all kinds of stuff. And that's the point I'm trying to get to you here. The Panopticon is real. But it's for your education, for your awareness. So you're not out there putting stupid-ass information online where in places where it shouldn't be and getting yourself caught up, man. You got to be smart about this. Remember that these people are trying to catch you doing things like smoking plants or just living your life or you working without a business license or whatever it may be. And if you want to be smart, then you need to be aware. A new report from the Center for Investigative Reporting reveals that police in Chicago and LA are using advanced cell site simulators or Stingray surveillance technology that is capable of breaking cell phone encryption. Now, I've written extensively about this topic. You can find tons of articles from me on all the different outlets I write for, going very deep into this. So catch up on that if you don't know what a Stingray is. It's basically a tool that allows you to trick cell phones into sending all of its information by acting as a fake cell tower. The new information that we have, though, has nothing to do with the Harris Corporation, which is the corporation that I've reported on most until this recent revelation. This company called DRT, Digital Receiver Technology, a Maryland company acquired by Boeing in 2008. Their cell site simulator is not known as a Stingray, and it's actually stronger. It's just called the DRT, or Dirt Box, and it's capable of breaking encryption on communications from 200 cell phones simultaneously across 4G frequencies. So the other ones operated mainly on 2G and 3G. This is the latest bad boy, 4G, break your cell phone encryption, steal all your data, and feed it to the cops box here. And it's being used in LA and Chicago, and I guarantee you it's being used other places too. So check out the article, learn more about it, start doing FOIA requests in your area, open records requests. Find out. Only you can stop surveillance and forest fires. I mentioned 9/11 a couple minutes ago, and I want to just throw this one out there. There's not much to add to it, but it's just the continuation, again, of what we keep seeing. The trial for the accused 9/11 terrorist delayed once more. As we near the 14th anniversary of the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, the 5 men accused of being the masterminds still have not been granted a speedy trial. And once again, the trial was set back last week as the U.S. military canceled another pre-trial hearing that was scheduled from August 24th through September 4th. Citing a conflict of interest, James Pohl, the Army colonel and judge for the trial, said that unresolved issues will have to be fixed before they can go forth. And in the article, I give all the examples of how many times this thing has been pushed back and how these people have been tortured. They've faced sleep deprivation. They've faced abuse of all kinds. I mean, it really is outrageous to sit here and to think about what's happened to these men. And I know, again, you're like, wait, well, they killed people on 9/11. Well, we'll have to do a whole episode on 9/11 later, probably as we get closer, because that's a bunch of bullshit. I don't know if these men are necessarily patsies completely or what role they had, but definitely more than Osama bin Laden. Afghanistan, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. And if Osama bin Laden had anything to do with it, he was working with friends of the Bushes and friends of the Saudis. So that we can already say off the top of the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like there's clear evidence that financing came from other places than what we were told, and these men are not being allowed to tell their story. The whole case is not going to be televised. Reporters won't be allowed in, and there's going to be surveillance from other officials. The CIA is intervening. The FBI is trying to basically infect and infiltrate the defense team. I mean, it's crazy. I know it sounds really crazy, but read up on this article and you'll find out more why I say that. The whole trial for these guys, the idea of them getting a fair trial of any type, is absolutely bullshit, and it's fucked. It's sad because they deserve that. And, you know, as I said earlier, if we are, as a country or as a nation, as individuals, are trying to have the moral high ground, the second that we give that up in order to be crazy and say, well, they killed our people, so let's just slaughter them, then, you know, we've lost the moral high ground and we become that which we are trying to fight. We have to still give people the rights that they deserve and show people that we can value truth and justice more than we can petty revenge. All right, so the last article that I'm going to cover today is something I just wrote for the antimedia.org. Just came out yesterday, Friday. And this one's cool because it's not crazy, scary, bad news. It's actually something that's kind of interesting because it's related to art and comic books. If you like comics, that's cool too. But really the reason I wanted to write about this is because I have a younger brother who's into young adult novels and comics, and I see him reading and getting into the Hunger Games and stuff like this, and I really think that these ideas are going to be powerful and influential in the way that we're able to shape the future, these future resistance movements, and basically making sure that not all of the people who are growing up in the age of the internet are going to have their faces sucked into Snapchat and forget how to speak with more than just a couple of letters and not just be completely distracted and dumbed down. Because I think that's the perception that some people have, that the future is just lost because they look at like Miley Cyrus or MTV or just anything on TV really, I guess, and think that that is what all people are like. But there's a lot of amazing people, amazing young dudes doing, and women, lots of just young people in general doing awesome stuff. Off the top of my head, Andrew Demeter, if you don't know him, I think he's 15, 16 now, maybe 17. He's about to start school again, I know, and he does badass, really, really well produced videos. Also, Cassius Methel, he writes for the Anti-Media, and there's a couple other young dudes that I've met over the past few years who are doing good things. So it's not all lost. And this article covers this new comic book that I want to pick up. It's called The Young Terrorists, which just came out on the 19th, 3 days ago, and it's already sold out. It sold out in one day. Maybe because it's a small company and they couldn't really keep up with the demand, but it just shows you that there is a demand and that people want to read these ideas. So it's sold out until later in September, and then you can get some more then, which is what I'm going to do. But it follows the story of this chick named Sarah and then a dude named Caesar, which is, I don't know if that's his real name, but it's the name he takes on in the comic book. And I quote a couple of pieces of the comic, one panel from it. And basically they're discussing how the state has failed and they live in an area. It kind of sounds like an anarchist community. She says, we made deals with the corrupt police and local drug lords. We carved out an 8-block radius. No cops patrol here. They don't respond to calls. The immediate perimeter is the drug dens. They hold the line. The next perimeter is no income housing, free rent, free food, free utilities. And she also tells him, drones fly overhead sometimes, so just keep your hood up when you're outside. You can be invisible here. And she basically goes on to tell him that, they're living in this part of town where everybody who lives there is chosen to go off the grid and is trying to fight the surveillance state and just remake themselves. And it's a really cool idea. And then I list a couple of other books and graphic novels in the article that you may not have heard of. One's called DMZ, another is called Little Brother from a few years ago, which apparently was a New York Times bestseller for a children's book. And then the Voluntarist comic book, which is also badass. They have episodes or books like The Voluntarist versus the TSA, Voluntarist versus Status Zombies, and they're working on a new one called Saving Snowden, The Voluntarist versus the NSA. So that's kind of cool. And it's just, for me, it's important to infect pop culture and art in general with a message that is going to be about powerful, conscious topics, not just the mundane, dumbed-down bullshit that I think most people expect to see in popular culture. It's not all bad. It's not all coming to kill you, I promise. The last thing I wanted to talk about before I wrap this up, we're just about at an hour, is the topic of animal rights and animal consciousness. And I'm probably going to do a more in-depth podcast specifically on this, but I just wanted to get the topic started and get your opinions on what you think about it. I wrote about it in the book in chapter 8 maybe, or 7 or 6 or something like that, one of those numbers. Somewhere in there you'll find a chapter on animal consciousness, plant consciousness, and earth consciousness, and whether or not these beings, these creatures, these individuals have rights, and what are rights in general. And I got some new thoughts on that I want to add to the book soon, or maybe do a new essay. I was listening to a podcast from Tom Woods. You can go to YouTube, search Tom Woods Show /animal consciousness or something like that. You'll find it. And it's a conversation he did with the professor Gary Chartier, and they're discussing what are rights, first of all. So like the first half of the podcast discusses that, and that's an important conversation because I feel like people use these words and people say, water is a human right, or what is human right in general, and where do those rights come from, and how do you, there's some interesting topics and conversations to dissect that idea of what rights are in general. And you have to understand what rights are before you can say that people deserve them or that we have them. If you don't know what a right is, then how can you say you have it, and how can you say you're fighting for it if you can't define what it is? So very important to understand what you mean when you talk about certain things. And then from that topic, they go into, okay, well, can animals have rights? And this is a topic that I've run into quite a bit for somebody who really cares about animals and doesn't eat them and just cares about sentient life in general, is some people think that because animals can't make, or they believe animals can't make rational decisions because they're only instinctual, or they're going off of they're just going off of their instincts, that they don't have the ability to process complex decisions, then they don't have the ability to defend themselves, and they don't have the ability to they just don't have rights. They're just, their property basically is the idea that you own animals. And this same type of person would probably say that you own your children. And I'm not really so sure if I believe in that concept either, that we own our children. I think that we're, the guardians. We're here, we brought them into this world, and so we protect them. But I don't think that we necessarily own them. But I don't think that the state owns them either. I don't think the community owns them, because that gets into some really scary ass ideas too. So it's, it's some complex stuff here. But one of the thoughts that they left me with that I really felt like, okay, this is what I was trying to say in the book, and I didn't go deep enough in the book, but I definitely am going to kind of flesh out this idea deeper. But they were talking about, well, maybe you could, the same way that in society, mentally handicapped individuals, for example, they're human beings, and they are seen as worthy of having rights, right? Just because somebody's mentally handicapped, or physically handicapped, you can't just go beat the shit out of them. You can't just steal all their stuff. Whatever. You have to treat them like a person, like you would anybody else. You don't treat them like some people treat animals. You don't abuse them and things like that. So they were making the argument then that maybe you could be an agent or a representative of an animal, and that this animal could be viewed as somebody who is on level with a mentally handicapped individual. That's somebody that is deserving of rights but can't necessarily communicate for themselves, or at least not in the way that we recognize, and can't speak up for themselves. So you can act as an agent to defend that animal. I thought that was a really interesting idea. And then also, even further than that, I feel like some people might make the claim and feel justified in making the claim that we're basically, they're non-human animals, and we are human animals. We're all still animals. That's one thing that people forget about as well, is that this idea that we're supposed to conquer or dominate nature, that we're beyond nature. But really, people forget that we are a part of nature. We're an extension of nature. We can't escape that. So even though we're able to have this discussion and get into these complex ideas, it doesn't mean that we're still not animals. So being animals coexisting with other non-human animals, somebody might make the argument, I might make the argument, that if I see you abusing an animal, that is a member of my family, and so then I have a right to self-defense of a member of my family. And so then, if needed, I could use violence to defend that animal against somebody who is hurting them. And somebody might say, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're interfering on my rights to abuse my property. But I guess that's where it gets complex, because I don't think that an animal is your property. But yeah, I'm just rambling now. Those are my thoughts on animal rights, animal consciousness. What are your thoughts? Check out the podcast, Tom Woods Show, Animal Rights, Gary Chartier. I'm sure you'll enjoy the conversation, and then come back and leave some comments here. And like I said, we'll probably do a bigger discussion on that later, or another essay, because I think it's something that plenty of American libertarian anarcho-capitalist individuals don't necessarily take their thought that far. They're really stuck on the economics or just the political philosophy of it, and don't want to necessarily consider the other issues that apply, and that's what the idea of my book, The Conscious Resistance, Reflections on Anarchy and Spirituality, was about, is trying to bring these different viewpoints together. That's all I got today. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, The Conscious Resistance Network. If you're watching the video, subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. If you're listening on Patreon, thank you guys for supporting. And if you enjoy this, please tell your friends, share it with them. You can find me on Facebook, or email me at derek@theconsciousresistance.com if you ever need to talk, or just got some ideas you want to share. And I will be back maybe next week if I don't get too busy. As always, if you can hear this, you are the resistance. Peace.